Hello, everybody. You are seeing the incredibly talented Blue Hat Zach, who's going to be showing you everything there is to show you about Blender modifiers, tricks, tonight. But before we do that, I'm Andrew Greenberg, better known as Nurgle the Plague Bearer, getting over the last bits of the cold and with a few vital announcements for all of you out there in GTDA land. It's awesome. Zach doesn't have to move his lips, and I keep talking, and he's amazing. So, first of all, thanks, of course, to our Patreon. Stephen Coffey, you better be tuning in tonight. Burton Posey, Lee Friedman, James Simpson of Snarf Quest, Trey Carpenter, and Joe Casava of Puzzles by Joe. Thank you all very much. If you are not a Patreon, please sign up at patreon.com/GeorgiaGameDevs. I'm actually about to create some new levels for that and put in some new rewards. So it's a better time than ever to support those efforts. We really need that support to keep these regular live streams and the YouTube channel we've been putting together going. I'm sure you're following us in a lot of different ways, but let me let you know that on Saturday we are having a free live stream training as well as training in shoutcasting and esports team development. It will be at VS Realms in North DeKalb Mall. I'll have information up on ggda.org, and you can find information in our Facebook group. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the one, the only Blue Hat Zach to let you know everything you want to know and need to know about Blender.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So, for those of you just turning in for your first time, maybe you've been here before, I just shared with you, Andrew, a link to a Dropbox posting. It's one of my cheat sheets that I've worked on for a while now, so that everyone can kind of have if this is your first time, it'll help you kind of get through some of the kinks, a lot of shortcuts and some easy setups. If you want to post that, Andrew, that'd be great amongst the chats. If not, I can go ahead and post it later once we get going. But until then, let's go ahead and get this screen share going. Alrighty, let me make sure that everything came through. There we go. Looks good on my end, I believe. Alrighty. So today we're going to be in Blender, working on a couple little bit more advanced things. Basically, Blender does a lot of different tricks for you that allows you to expand and do things much quicker without necessarily the use of a whole bunch of manual labor. So we're going to go over a couple of those little tricks and see what all you can do with these things. So getting into Blender, first off, one of my favorites that I like to show people as we get started is this wonderful little tool called Alt-R. It's kind of the basics as we get into the modifiers. Modifiers are going to be a little bit more powerful, but Alt-R is still a really fun tool to work with. So we're going to take this default cube right here, and I'm just going to collapse it down to a single vertex. So hitting W allows me to go into the specials menu, which can let you merge everything at the center. And this is just going to take this cube and collapse it all the way down into one vertex. You can see up here at the top of the screen, right up here, if I can put a little box right there, it says vertex 1. So we've only got one vertex here. So if I was to take this vertex right here and extrude it outwards, so what we're going to do real quick is make a little outline of a wine glass. So I'm just going to extrude this, kind of make, the basic bottom, moving up to the stem, building this little nice cup as we go out. So just making not even a full glass, just the outline of a half. It's a little blurry. Is that my end that I need to adjust to make it less blurry? I'm not sure. Is that okay? Let's see. How would I adjust that in the Discord? Let's see. Settings. It might be simply the fact that I don't have Discord full, like Discord Nitro, which is the paid version, so it's only doing 720. Yeah, it might be that. So without going to Skype, this might be about as good as it's going to get at the moment. But until we figured that out, so what we're going to do real quick is, so we've got this nice little this wireframe half piece of a cup right here. So what Alt-R is going to do is going to rotate everything and kind of create mesh materials as it goes. So from a top view with the cursor in the middle here, I'm going to hit Alt-R, and you can see it makes all this data right here. So over on this little side panel over here, we've got all the different steps as we're going to go through this. If you were to click off, that whole panel goes away. So you want to make sure that you do it and don't step away from this before you do it. So if we're going to do a full cup, we need a 360 degrees. So go ahead and punch that in. And then if we want more steps, we can knock that up to 32 or so. Give us a little bit more data to work with. And so it's a really simple, really easy tool to work with. And there we've got a little goblet. Super, super simple. And it's much more than just that. Let's see if I can, no, I don't think it's gonna let me do everything else. But here, just collapse everything. If we were to take this all again, and go ahead and extrude something out just so we can kind of see, to demonstrate a point. If you were to move the cursor from here and then rotate it, it's actually going to rotate everything relative to your cursor, not just, oh wait, that's why it's not just spinning it around the center point, it's actually spinning it around this cursor. So wherever that cursor is, it's where it's going to be. And you can actually update that before you step away from this. It's just a really cool little tool to use. A lot of different tips, a lot of different ways you can use it. And depending on how far we get, we might use this later. But anyways, so now let's go ahead and dive into some modifiers. So for anybody who's a programmer looking to get into Blender for the first time, the idea of a array is not something that's foreign to you. But for anyone else, basically an array, for lack of better describing, is a row of boxes. It's a series of entities that allows you to have the data within it. So, but the way that that Blender is going to look at arrays in this particular instance, looking at modifiers, is duplications of a single object over whatever you want in terms of space. So if we just take this simple cube right here and start adding on an array modifier, you can notice right there, now we've got what looks like a twice as long cube, but it's actually 2 cubes. And over here, we've got some settings that we can play with. So let's hide all these guys. You can, this panel over here hides with T, and this one over here hides with N. So now we've got all these settings we can work with. And so there's 2 basic offsets that we've got to work with, which is relative and constant. We'll talk about relative first, because that one's a little bit easier. So we're going to take this up a little bit so you can kind of see there actually is a distinction between the 2 of these. And so you've got your count up here. We can give as many or as little as we want of them. And the idea with the relative offset is no matter what I edit in this cube, it's going to keep this spacing right here the same in terms of, yeah. So you'll notice, and this is where modifiers get really powerful, is I change one thing about one object and it updates it in all of them. I didn't have to tab over, move anything else. It's just an automatic update in all of them. You can see this piece is always making it that same relative offset, where it's always going to be set apart the same distance roughly. It's all relative to how big the object is itself. Whereas constant offset, if we're to do a constant offset of 1.2, which is the same as the relative offset, you'll notice that it's a little bit different. So we kind of see here. So instead of updating and changing its location as it goes, which is what the relative does, the constant well, that's way big right now. The constant keeps all of your bodies, oh, so we got both, there we go. The constant keeps all of the bodies in the same place, but allows you to edit on the fly. Different uses for both tools, but this is a really fun one to work around with. So we're just going to kind of give an overview of everything as we kind of look at modifiers and see where we can go from there. We're going to end up building a staircase towards the end of all this, and you'll kind of see how we can use different modifiers to build stairs. So we'll get there though in a bit. So let's go ahead and throw out another cube here, just a clean start. One that we talked about at SimFest, for any of you who are from SimFest, was the mirror modifier. So mirror modifiers are great in that it allows you to have changes across your axes that are the same. Let's see, where is my, there we go. The thing to note about mirror modifiers is that it's relative to the axis, but it's not relative to the 0, 0 point. It's actually relative to your origin. So this little dot is where Blender sees your object actually at. Sure, there's a ton of mesh data that has everything, but that has one specific point in the 3D space, which is your origin. That's what everything is relative to here. So let's say if I move this back to even right here, just so you can see it better. So we're mirrored across the x-axis, and so if I was to take this and move the whole object, it allows me to, the whole thing still stays relative to that origin point, not to the axis itself, no matter where these go. I can still scale this and move this, and it's going to be snapping to that piece. You can do multiple axes. That can create some really fun things. Allows you, and again, this is where modifiers have their power, is that everything updates across all the different objects. So it allows you to do more than one thing, make everything even and very simple. So let's see, what was this right here. The other one, and I know I'm kind of flying through these, but these are a little bit more advanced, so we're gonna just kind of touch on the ideas of them in the beginning. The last one is gonna be, that we're looking at for now, is a Boolean modifier. So if anybody knows Boolean set notation, that's what we're looking at here, basically. So what we're actually gonna do is, right now, is carve a chip out of this cube by using this sphere right here. So basically, when you create the point and when you allow them two to intersect with each other, and then put a modifier on one, and the order actually matters a lot here. You want the modifier to go on the shape that gets cut out, and then you want it to point to the shape that's doing the cutting. So we're going to add a modifier right here and point it to the sphere. If you look, everything magically disappears. We don't want that. There's 3 different options that you have here, and if I remember right, we want the difference. So if we were to take this and hide this right now, you'll see, presto, this little piece is gone, which is really cool. And if we were to move this around, you'll actually see that the whole piece keeps updating where the cut's coming out of. If we hide that, you can see everything changes. So it allows you to do some really cool things. Can greatly simplify a lot of modelings that you didn't necessarily need. Now, you do, if you're very concerned about faces and such, you do have to be aware that this doesn't make the cleanest face. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this modifier and go into edit mode, and you can see it's all the faces are there, but it's not necessarily the cleanest. So sometimes you might have to go back and clean this up, but it definitely can give you a lot of shortcuts overall. So, and And just from here, for anyone who's stuck with this series the whole way, we can real quick model that. I think we have enough time. Yeah, we can real quick model the table that we started out with, the little picnic table that we used, but we're going to do it with modifiers this time, and you can see quickly how much can go on. Without us doing all that work by hand in the same way. So let's see, in the beginning, we started out with our little tabletop, and we're gonna take this and scale it, what was it, by 4, scale X, oops. Scale X 4 times, there we go. Scale Y, we'll just do 2, actually, but we don't actually need that. Let's take this. So instead, let's make it, let's actually do like the planks like a top would have. So if we go and take this array modifier right here, and give us just a little offset, now we can actually have the top of our table, and it's all very consistent. We don't have to worry about anything. Like, I'm gonna make it look a little bit symmetrical, but it's done. It's easy. It allows us to do a lot really fast, which is what's great about these modifiers. So, boom, we got that done. Anytime you want to work with all the other faces, you actually have to hit apply, and if I click it now, it should error out on me. Yeah, modifiers have to be applied in object mode, not edit mode. So tab back out and hit apply. Now I can actually work on each of these individually, and it's going to let me update them accordingly. So let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and add the legs real quick. Grab this, move it up, scale Y. If we're to take this, we're going to do a really simple version of this. Don't take up too much time with it. But just so you can kind of see the difference between the different buildings. So we took this, and now with these 4 legs, we can go ahead and just add a mirror modifier. As long as our origin is still in the middle, boom, we've got 4 legs. So really simplifies a lot of things, makes it much more consistent. If I move 1, it's going to move all of them. Which is both a blessing and a curse. And so know if you want to have different pieces going on. So like, for example, this has symmetry in both the X and Y axis. So if I take this and move it, it's essentially got a duplication times 2, so it's squared. If I wanted to add another piece in here, I'm also going to have of itself. So if I was to, let's say, add the little sidebar panel right here, I wouldn't want to just add it right here. I did something. There we go. I'll probably actually want to make it into its own object. Oops, let's put it in the center. There we go. That'll simplify some things. Make it its own object. And go from there. So that way, when we put this in, for us having this sidebar, which is what we ended up putting the seats on last time. I don't have 4 of it duplicated. I only have the 2, so that allows you to do it like so. And from here, a lot of times when you start using modifiers, sometimes you'll end up with multiple objects, which isn't necessarily desirable. At some point, you're going to want them in a single. So if you apply all the different modifiers you have, you can select everything that you're working with, and then hit Control-J, and it's going to join them all to a single mesh. And from here, everything's just like we had the first time. The ability to manipulate everything individually in a single object, which is great because now it all acts and responds like we want it to. Cool. So let's actually look at like combining some modifiers. If anyone in chat is or out there is watching and has any questions, please shout out. I know I'm going fast, but I'm always willing to detour and to explain something either in more depth or to just answer any questions you might have. Because Blender can be kind of intimidating, so definitely shout out if you have anything. So let's go ahead and work with the idea of making a staircase, because this can be kind of fun. So from here, let's see. Any in-person workshop happening soon? I'm not sure. Yeah, we might have something at Siege. I don't know what Andrew's got cooked up in his head. I'm always willing to talk about anything, but I'm not sure of any Blender specific workshops directly in the near future. But anyway, so I was working as I was talking. Basically, I just took this cube, and instead of having it a fully default cube, I just started manipulating it down a little bit. Gregory Art, you should definitely go to Siege because it's going to be super awesome. And even if there isn't a Blender workshop, there's going to be a lot of other really good workshops and talks going on that weekend. All right, so let's go ahead and take this and give ourselves a little bit of a wider stair to work with. And here's something that I do want to touch on. There's an idea that you can do in Blender, and I'm pretty sure any other software is going to give you this. But it's the idea of loop cutting. So if you hit Control R, you see this nice little pink line pop up, and the loop cut is actually going to give us, if I left click, it's going to confirm that I want one loop cut, and then I'm just going to place it wherever I want it. So if I left click again, it's going to place it exactly there. If I left click and then right click, it's going to center it. And if I hit Control R, there we go. If I hit Control R and don't click yet and scroll up and down, you can see that it gives you a lot of cuts. So this is a good way to, it's all even. It's a good way to get a lot of geometry if you want to do a lot of little things, giving yourselves more of a contour perhaps, but that's not what we're doing with right now. I just wanted to show you that, because what we're doing with this loop cut is we're going to give ourselves that little lip that that stairs often have. So we put a loop cut in. I'm going to do that again because that was really quick fast. Put a loop cut in on the side and pull it all the way up, and if I hit Control, it's going to snap it right there where I want it. And then select this whole front face, and I'm going to extrude it outwards in the x-axis. So that way we have that little tick, like most stairs do. Cool. So just making it look a little bit better. There we go. So from here, what we can do is apply take an array modifier and throw it on here. And it's going to be a little quirky because we're going in the or negative in the x-axis. But if we do a -1 in the x, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, no, that's actually what we wanted. And then positive in the z-axis. So let's just see what it looks like at 1. So now you can see, if we take this up, so we've got some stairs. So we can actually bring this down a little bit. I think 0.7 is pretty good. That's a perfectly even spot. So now it's pretty sweet. You've got some simple stairs that we can go with. And if you ever mess around with it, there's a lot of cool settings you can do in here. Fit curve is really fun but quirky, so be warned. But fit length is really simple, where just whatever length you want, if you just wanted to cover 6 units, it's going to fit as many of that object as it can within 6 Blender units. Easy way to make things consistent. As well, if I was to take this object and scale it down, it should, oh, no, it's not doing it the way I thought it would. Oh well. All right, so if we've got some simple stairs, let's go ahead and add on some handrails. So with the handrails, so we're going to make a different object because we want these mirrored on both sides, and the modifiers we want to be separate. We don't need mirrors of these steps on top of themselves. So let's go ahead and add a new object. I'm gonna go into wireframe mode just so I can see this a little bit better. And pull this up, scale it into Y, give us some nice little thin barriers to work with. Let's go Y again. There we go, and slide this over. Just getting this to look kind of nice enough. That looks pretty good. Yep. Alrighty, so with this piece right here, we can take it and add on the array modifier like we already had. If we simulate the same, do the same things that we did on the last one, it goes -1 and then 0.7 up. We're just going to do fixed count for now because that's easy enough. Fixed count, that's 5. There we go. So we've got the array on here, and you can add multiple modifiers. It's really nice. In many cases, the order of modifiers does matter. In this case, we're adding an array and then that array, which is basically the same thing as adding as putting on the mirror and then adding the array. It's 5 times 2 is 10 and 2 times 5 is 10. You're getting the same result. It's just what order you're doing it in. But in this case, we're going to mirror it across the y-axis, and so you can see, I believe the y, yeah. And from there, we have our nice little pieces going up. We do need a handrail, and this is where things can get a little tricky, because there's not a really good way to do this simply in Blender. Based off the way I'm doing it, just using modifiers. We can try to do something. We'll see if it works. It works sometimes when I'm testing it. So we'll gamble and see what we can do here. So I'm going to take this, and we're going to build this as the handrail. Take this, and now we've got a really tiny cube here. That's all we're working with. So if we're to take this, and we're going to make a array modifier, and we're actually going to make a path. So curves in Blender, people use them a lot in animation. There's a lot of different things you can do with them. In this case, we're using the very, very simplest version of a curve in Blender, which is going to be basically a 2-point path. Just point A to point B. When you create a path in the beginning, it actually has, I think, like 5 points in it. So we're going to take out these middle points, and if you hit X, it's going to delete them. Now you can see we only have 2 points. Very, very simple line. And we're using it for a very, very simple purpose. The curves, I mentioned earlier, there's this idea where you can fit your array to the length of the curve. So if we say fit curve, and it's going to, nothing changed because we have a pointer that it has to point to. If you're familiar with Unity, this interface is probably very intuitive to you in that regard. So we can click, and it's going to give us all the options for the different curves that we can select. And you can see it made a whole bunch of points there. So if we take this and change that, it's let's see here. It's going to make that larger or smaller based on however many we have, which is great. So now we have to get this to if we want, what we can do is take this path and move it up here and make it go from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs. But we need to make this snap to that first. So we've got the array modifier, and now we're going to actually have to put on a curve modifier, which again is going to be just like last time. We have an object that it has to deform to. And let's see if I can get this right. Might have to do it this way. Trying to get this to do right. Let's see. There we go. I think I just had to put it back at the center, and it allows it to snap better and play well with friends. So from here, let's go ahead and do the wireframe mode so we can see this a little bit better. So here I'm actually in edit mode on the curve, not on the cubes. I'm going to take the whole curve, I'm going to grab it and put the bottom point down here, and the top point we're going to grab and move up here. And we're going to take this whole thing from there, we can slide it over, and now, there we go, that looks pretty decent. Now we can just take this and throw on a mirror modifier, make sure it's on the right axis. Oh, nope, this is the wrong object. I'm on the curve. I don't want the curve mirrored. I actually want the handle itself to be mirrored. So let's go ahead and throw it on there. Boom, there we go. That's looking better. Sweet. So now we've got that. So that's the basic idea of what we want. There's a lot of different cool tricks you can do with this. I don't know how well this is gonna play, but if I was to take this and want to build a little handrail, kind of go around, I'm just extruding this point, and it allows you to add in more data. Gives it a little bit of a cleaner finish. And all of this, again, is relative to my little cube that I built in the first place. So I believe it's this last cube. So if we were to actually edit this one cube, take it and maybe make him a little shorter, you're going to see that that affects the whole piece. And some of these modifiers, let's say if you wanted to edit it, you see how it snaps back in, which isn't necessarily conducive to a good workflow. You can take this, and over in these settings, you'll see you've got all these settings. Basically, the way Blender works, if you ever see this, is this going to be shown in the whenever you render it? Is it going to be visible in the editor? Is it going to be visible in edit mode, and then working with it in the editor as well? So basically, if you want to see all this as you're working on it live, just pretty much apply all of these, and you're going to be able to see it. It's not always going to be what you want, but it'll give you a much better idea of what's kind of going on sometimes. So we're going to take this. Yeah, that looks good from there. So we can, if we scale this down, you can see the top part actually changes its size. And if we scale it the y-axis as well, you can see the whole thing kind of starts to get a little bit better. Scale in the x, there we go. So now that curve's starting to look a lot smoother because we just put in a whole bunch more of these subdivisions. So the more we put it in, the cleaner those curves are going to look. So let's see if we take this, and let's just go ahead and extrude a little bit more. So now we've got a kind of a finish on both ends. With this little gap right here, you can take your points just very simply, making sure that it looks good, and apply it all up. So now we've got a basic idea for a staircase, which looks fairly good. If you want to do something interesting, what we can actually do is sometimes you'll see some creative banisters where you've got some holes drilled into the sides of these boards. So to add on everything what we've already done so far, let's go ahead and add in a cube. Let's add in a cube at the center point. So Shift C to point back at 0, 0, 0. Shift A to add a cube. We're going to take this whole thing, just scale it down so it's really tiny. 0.1 is what I just did. Let's make it even tinier so we can actually put a little bit of something in here. Actually, no, you know what? We're going to get fancy. We don't need cubes. We use too many cubes. Let's build it with a cylinder. Now we can get super fancy. It'll look nice. Going to rotate it on its side so that way when we punch a hole through it, it'll actually look like a circle, not just like a square, because that defeats the purpose. Scale this thing down really tiny. If we grab this, so now if you look right there, just kind of centered. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. If we take this whole thing and move it to where our point is, I'm going to make it a little longer just because if you think about a hole punch is bigger than the piece of paper that it's going through. So that way you don't have to really worry if it actually went through or not all the way. So from here, let's just get creative with it. So sure, let's add an array on it. Maybe we'll just do like a relative of 2 up or something. Is that up? Oh, it's still got the 1 on it. There we go. Trying to figure out why it's going that way. Why is it going that way? Did I rotate it in the wrong mode? Yeah. So here's something that if you ever run into in Blender, this is what happened. So if you notice, what I did was I tried to give myself a relative offset of 2 in the z-axis, which is this blue axis. It should be going up. It did not go up. It in fact went sideways. The reason why is because these modifiers are applied at the object level, and I'm looking at it at the mesh level. Basically, is what I'm thinking of it in. But if I come over here to this inside menu and look, you're going to see I have a rotation here. And so this relative offset is being applied, but it's going through this rotation as well. So it is being applied up. It's just I'm rotated 90 degrees, which makes my up go sideways. To clear this out by hitting 0, you see that it actually is up. Instead of hitting 0, you can also just hit Alt-R. Alt-R undoes rotation. If you're familiar with all the other ones, G for grab for moving it around. Alt-G undoes that, puts it back at 0, 0, 0. Alt-S puts all your scales back to zeros. So that's basically what happened. I can get around this by actually making my rotations in edit mode instead of in object mode. So now you'll see I have 2 that are going the right direction, which is exactly what I wanted in the first place, which is good. So let's see from here. Let's get creative. Let's just scale it, make it a little bit more exciting. That looks kind of good right there. So we can take this. And it doesn't matter where it is because this hole punch is going straight through the whole object. Remember, if we want to apply a Boolean, we have to apply the Boolean onto the object that's getting cut, and then it's pointing at the object that's doing the cutting. So we have this modifier right here. Go ahead and add this Boolean. Have it point to the cylinder, and it should be leave a difference. Yeah, if we hide that, you'll see, boom, it's great. But if you notice, none of the other ones have it, which is really sad because we went through all that effort, and now it doesn't have it because, like we said earlier, order matters. So if you look, I've got an array modifier, the mirror, and the Boolean. So basically what it's actually doing is that, hey, Epic Steve, we're just getting into Blender and looking at modifiers. Feel free to ask any questions if you've got any. Basically, the idea of what we're going with here, what's happening, the reason why this hole's not getting here. First, it creates the array of 5 pieces. So it's going to create this array first. Here, we'll actually let's turn these all off so we can see it kind of in action. So basically what's happening is first it creates the array of 5, and then it turns on the mirror modifier, and then it turns on the hole. So the hole only applies to the first one. But if we were to take this, these little arrows up and down right here allow you to recognize them. If we move this Boolean modifier up 1, first it's gonna, now it's in front of that mirror, and if we move it up 1 more, it's gonna be in front of the mirror, in front of the array. And so now the piece applies to all of them. So like I said earlier, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it definitely does, because you have to know what's going on. But this is the nice part too. So none of the data is actually, none of those mesh pieces are actually here until we, until you apply these modifiers. Which, if you want to keep working with it like this, it's great. If not, you can always apply these modifiers and get into the actually change things on your own. So one other thing I would like to do before we get going, and this is a trick that I actually kind of learned when I was prepping for this, which is really cool, because I wanted to make this whole staircase kind of curve, which would be great but it's not the easiest. There's different ways you can do it, and none of them are super great. But the best one that I found is going to give us an empty object to actually control the transform itself. So if you're familiar with animations, you kind of know what I'm talking about with bones and armatures, controlling points. That's not necessarily the mesh itself. So what we're going to do here is, I apologize if I messed this up. I haven't done it too many times against a new trick. But what we're going to do here is go into add and going to add a new empty. Really, whatever empty you add doesn't matter. It's just how it represents itself inside of Blender. It's still going to be an empty. It's just what's the mesh on the screen in the editor that you're looking at. So from here, let's just go ahead and add in a sphere. So it's going to give us these little axes. So you can kind of see when we rotate it, you're going to be able to see that it's actually rotated and everything with that. So it's at 0, 0, 0, which is important because all of our changes are gonna, anything that's offset is gonna be relative to how far this is away from 0, 0, 0, and how far it's out of standard, essentially, out of its standard orientation, scaling, and rotation. So we're gonna do, let's just actually hide all these guys for now, just so we can kind of simplify these things. We're just gonna work with the stairs in the beginning. And so right here in the array modifier, we've got this little thing called object offset. So if we click that and have it point to our empty that we just created and turn this off, now you'll see that there's nothing here. But basically what it is instead of using one of these constant and relative offsets, it's using the XYZ of the empty itself. So if I come on to this empty and move this empty, you see everything's magically appears. So it allows you to have customization without actually having to go into that fire. And you can have multiple different things point to this empty, which is really good too. So if we were to take this, let's set it up how we used to have it. So is it -1 and positive 0.7. So that's what we've got right there. And now if we were to take this and let's rotate it in the z-axis, you'll see the whole thing magically moves, which is really, really cool. This allows you to do some really cool things, and everything is updated live. It makes it so much simpler in a lot of regards. So if I was to take this and kind of to match these points up, it allows you to do some really, really cool things. Let's go back now. We unhide, let's hang on, there we go. If you go back here and unhide everything, oh, I forgot that guy was there earlier. Let's see, let's go ahead and hide that back. Oh, there we go, that's what I wanted. I'm just putting these back to 0 so we can see everything well. Snap to grid, there we go. So now let's go ahead and pull these guys back. And if we were to do the same thing here on this, go ahead and turn on the object offset, or first turn off the constant, turn on the object so you can see it, so it does the same thing. And again, if you were to take this, rotate it in the Z, oops, rotate in the Z, not in the other axis, you're gonna see those all kind of map to the same spot. And it's a little quirky right now. It's not exactly what we want. I think I probably messed something up in there. It's actually probably the way in which all of these modifiers are applied. Yeah, let's check on that real quick. Rotate in the Z, 15 degrees. But change the order of the modifiers, and look, there it goes. So again, modifier order matters. And it's not going to play well with this curve modifier on this guy right here. I don't believe it will. We can try. I don't think it's gonna like it so much. Yeah, no, it's not gonna do what we want here. Yeah, but that's okay. From here, you would be able to, you can do this in different ways. You would just have to probably append it to one of these guys and make it go around. But there's different ways to skin the cat. And while we're here, because we do have a little bit of time, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and shout them out. If not, I'm just kind of going to touch on rendering because we haven't really looked at rendering a whole lot yet. So we might as well, since we've got a little bit extra time. If you have any questions, Andrew, I know you've always got good questions, even if the viewers don't. But I'm going to look at rendering a little quick. Just
actually, I think rendering is about the best thing you could show now. That's one other issue in general is good renderers.
Okay. Yeah. So so basically everything is relative to the camera right here when it comes to rendering. If you hit 0, you're going to snap to your camera. And you can move this just like you would in any other object using the widgets or using your grab commands and rotation as well. But if you want to go really simple, you can hit Shift F. And it's going to let you fly around. It's using a command similar to any video game with WASD and mouse movement. So you're able to move this around and kind of position it to where you want. And then if you left click, it's going to submit that, and that's where it's going to stay for whenever you go from there. And you've got your different lights. Lights can be different types. You've got Blender has the basics of what you need: point, sun, spot, and hemisphere lights. If you were to take these and populate your area, I'm not a big person in terms of photos who knows about. I know there's different points, different types of lighting schema that you can set up. Photographers are the ones who really ask about that. But basically, you want to kind of light up the dark spots. But you also do what's good for your scene. Sometimes you need those shadows. And I believe I've touched on this in the past, but if you've got your render, actually, before we get into this, I'm gonna go ahead and delete that one. Let's go ahead and see what we've got right here and go ahead and render this out. If you hit F12, or I'm not sure where it is, I think there's a render, render image, but it's F12 is the shortcut key. Oh, we still got that ball hiding around there. Where is he? When you hide objects, they always show up in the render, even though they're hidden from the scene. So you see this right here, boom, he's there, and that cylinder is also still there. So remember, you've got is it viewable in scene, and that's actually is it editable. I'm up here in this. You can see me up in this corner. I'm pointing to up here. Sometimes you can't follow the mouse. So is it viewable? Is it editable? Isn't it in the render? So we're going to turn this off from the render. And from viewing in the editor. So now if we were to render that, it should be much better. Cool. But you can see these awful shadows. And sure, we can throw in another light, which is kind of where it was earlier. If I duplicate this and just move another light over here and re-render it, yeah, it's going to look better, but it's still got these hard shadows. You can change the shadows on the lights. You can change the shadows, but if you want a very simple version without messing with the too many settings, if you turn on the ambient occlusion and my magic number is 0.05, that's going to soften all these shadows up and allow the light to bounce around a little bit more. It should have. What happened? Why did it not? Let's see. Yeah, it's still better than it is with off.
Yeah, you raise a great point. It's always important for the artist to think in terms of the final scene, the final usage of these art pieces.
Yeah,
when you're in this.
And this is one thing too that's important, and we'll touch on when we talk about Blender integrating with Unity, is that you can make this right here look gorgeous, and when you bring it into Unity, all of your lighting data is going to be pretty much lost. So especially if you're using Blender with game design, It's usually much better to not worry about your actual lighting in here and just work on your lighting once you get into Unity. The materials and textures you can do a lot with in here, but when you start pushing everything over to Unity is where everything's gonna really come together. And that's really where the important stuff is gonna happen. And if you wanted this is actually something that is important to me because it took me forever to figure this one out when I very began. But down here in the bottom corner, you've got your save as an image. You can just save it out to wherever you want, so that way you can keep track of all of your renders that you've been working towards. But yeah, that's really about all I've got. I know I left a little bit of time here for any questions that we might have.
How much will it hurt when you fall down the stairs?
Well, at the moment, not so much. But if I was to go, let's see, that's only a flight of 5 stairs. That's really not too bad. But you know, we can, yeah, you can make it a lot more painful. So it's
there
that's the nice part. Yeah,
now we're talking some damage.
Yeah, everything here is able to be edited on the fly. Like that's what makes this great. Let's see, I can get this path back in here. I should be able to grab this guy and move everything up. So instead of modeling this out by hand and making sure I copy and pasted everything really nice, it's all right there. It's all really simple. So this is really where a lot of the power sits at in Blender, is being able to use your modifiers well. And there's some other ones that we didn't even get to touch on. Some are really cool. And actually, just because we've got a little bit of time, this is one that I discovered just today even. Let's see if I can do this. First, I'm going to save this in case this messes up. Sure, that's fine. Yeah. Stream 3. I'm gonna go ahead and apply all of these modifiers. Whoops. Also note this point in order. Apply modifiers from the top down, not from the bottom up. Otherwise, bad things happen. So we're gonna go ahead and apply all these modifiers. Basically, I'm just getting to the point real quick where all of this is a single mesh. So we've taken all the modifiers. So now if you look at all of these individually, this is all one mesh, that is one, and those guys, there we go, are one. So we're going to combine all of these into a single mesh. Yeah, there we go. So they're all highlighted. Hit Control J, and it's going to make them all into one object. So if we named it up here, we've got stairs. So again, this is one that I just found today, but if you take this modifier right here for build, basically what it is an animation modifier. And if you've ever seen anything where it does like pixelated buildings of building out meshes as it goes, it's basically what this is. So if I was to hit play, let's make this a little bit longer maybe, do like 250 is actually where it was, so we'll change it here. If I was to hit play on this, you can see it's actually building out the whole piece, and it'll build this one by one for the whole entire thing, which is pretty cool. But from here, if we take this and randomize it and now hit play again, it'll actually build out the whole piece in this animated mode. And you can take this animation, you can bake it out, import it into Unity. This is it's just super cool to me because there's just so much going on that you just don't even have to do. And it's really is the whole point of the modifiers, is giving the power to the artist where you don't have to do all this tedious work. And it really opens up a lot of possibilities. And you can get super creative with it, which is what makes it so fun.
And I think it's especially important for early artists, folks who are early in their art careers as well as early in level design careers. One thing I always recommend is for early levels, do something simple, and for early art, do something simple. So catwalks, girders, these type of stairs, repeat, do the art over and over, but you can put them in interesting position, interesting ways, and start learning some of the intricacies both of art development and of level design.
Yeah, that's very true. If anybody's looking for some external resources and hasn't looked much into Blender, you'll find there's this guy. I'm gonna get flack for forgetting his name. Oh man, I'm remembering your name, Andrew. It's not Andrew Price is his name, I believe. He's an Australian guy, one of the best Blender gurus on the internet. But in his introduction videos, he doesn't, build a car or something fancy. He builds an anvil, because an anvil allows you to understand some really core concepts of what he does a little bit more advanced than what we're doing in his basic, but it's understanding some really core concepts of how you're building shapes and what you do with loop cuts and subdividing your surface. So it's really interesting. You don't have to do, like you're saying, Andrew, you don't have to do something super complex. Start with something very simple. In all these tutorials, we try to do something simple so you can understand the core concepts. So the complexity doesn't get in the way of learning what's actually going on. So
that's excellent. Last chance for questions, everybody. I think it was another excellent presentation by Blue Hat Zach. Thank you very much. I want to let everybody know that I have indeed updated our Patreon. As I mentioned, we now have a $1 early access pass, which gives you early access to videos like this one before they go live for everyone on YouTube. So we take this video, we pull it down, we make it private, we edit it up, make sure it's all right, and then we put it back up on YouTube. But our Patreons at the early access level, that's just $1 a month, get first crack at it. Now at higher levels, you get access to entire videos that nobody else will see, that are Patreon only, and there are quite a few of those already. But check out our Patreon. We've added new things to it. Follow us on Twitter at ggda_org. Follow Blue Hat Zach at Blue Hat Zach. Get on our Facebook page. Join the Augusta chapter of the GGDA. And thank you very much, Zach, for another excellent presentation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right. And have a good evening, and we will see you here next month.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.